Hey everybody, and welcome to our trip tips for the trip guide to the land of Lincoln through outdoor adventures made easy. So the point of this video is actually to accompany the trip guide that we have for Springfield, Illinois. Now, this is a little bit different of a trip guide than what we normally do. Normally, we're focused on outdoor natural adventures, but this one, I'm just a history lover, and I actually am kind of recreating a trip that I was able to go on with my grandmother several times when I was a child. And I was really excited to be able to take my children on this trip as well. So we are going to go through my top recommendations, the 4 stops that you absolutely have to go to. And then we have a couple additional stops that if you have time and want to check those out, you can do that as well. So let's hop into our trip tips for the Land of Lincoln trip guide. First up is the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum. This is one of the best interpretations in a museum that I have seen. They probably had a lot of resources to make a fantastic museum, but I absolutely love the job that they've done. They divided the museum kind of into 2 main areas, the pre-presidential years and then presidency and beyond. And the interpretation is it just comes to life, and it's engaging for all levels of kids, all the way up through adulthood. So be sure to allot several hours, I would say at least 2 to 3 hours for your time there at the museum. Another tip that I have is to actually brush up on some of your Abraham Lincoln knowledge, or if you have kids, read them some stories about Abraham Lincoln before you go to the museum. That way it's not quite so overwhelming, and they can see little things that spark reminders of what they've been learning. It helps them put the puzzle together a little bit more in their mind. And for me, I just needed to kind of dust off my memory a little bit about Abraham Lincoln. Then I was ready to learn more facts as I went to the museum there. So definitely, I would encourage you to make this one of your first stops, because it really does kind of help paint the whole picture of Abraham Lincoln and his amazing life. Next up is the New Salem State Historic Site. This is probably my favorite one of the trip. It feels a little bit more like what we normally do. It's not so urban like the other stops are. And the kids were able to really roam while they were here. So this is an actual location, the location that Abraham Lincoln lived before he moved to Springfield, Illinois. And one of the cabins there is the actual original cabin, which is pretty cool, that Abraham Lincoln would have spent time in. The rest of them are all recreations or have been brought back to the site, but they've recreated what the town or village would have looked like when Abraham Lincoln lived there. So be sure to wear good hiking clothes, or clothes to move around in, whatever the weather is. It's all outdoors. And be prepared for a really fun day while you're there. Probably our favorite spot is the Stone House there. It was the old visitor center, but now they've turned it into a little bit more of a play area, I guess you could say. It's pretty unassuming from the outside, and we might have missed it had somebody not made the recommendation that we go there. So there's air conditioning in there, which was really nice on the warm day that we were there. But it was loaded with so much fun stuff for the kids to do. You could easily spend at least an hour at the Stone House just letting your kids play and enjoy the area. So they have period-specific clothing. They have like really lifelike play food that the kids just enjoyed, making a meal in front of the fire and all this great stuff. Life-size Lincoln logs, a recreation of Lincoln's house in Springfield in like dollhouse form. Places to color and crafts and Pioneer toys. They just had so much really awesome stuff that the kids could just play with there. So be sure to hit the Stone House if you have kids, because it ended up being my kids' favorite part of the entire trip. So Lincoln's New Salem Historic Site is definitely a fun one that you're going to want to go to. Next up is Abraham Lincoln's home. So this is in Springfield, Illinois, in the actual town itself. And there is no fee for the tour. However, there is a fee for the parking lot there, just a small fee. But you cannot make reservations for the tours. It's just first come, first served. And one thing to know is that you'll meet in the visitor center, you'll get your ticket there, and then you'll wait for your tour to begin. But then from the visitor center, you actually go back outside and you walk to Lincoln's home. So depending on the weather, you might be walking, in the rain or whatever the weather is outside. You'll be back in that. So we toured on a rainy day, a misty day. And so we were really thankful that we wore raincoats. So just be mindful of that when you're there. Then you get to the house and you go through the tour, and they actually normally have like 2 to 3 tours in the house at a time. You're kind of wandering through it in a specific way so that you hear all of the interesting facts about the home itself. It really is a fascinating tour, and I would highly recommend that you do this while you're there. You can also tour the area itself, like the actual grounds. There's a lot of different houses that are there, and you can go in and stop and look at them. We didn't actually have time for that because, like I said, the weather wasn't great that day, but there's a lot to see and do in that location as well. The last of our top recommendations of where you need to go while you are in the land of Lincoln is Abraham Lincoln's tomb. So this one is really a pretty quick stop, or at least it was for us. But for me, I think it's really valuable to go. So we talked to our kids before we went about how to behave when you're there. So obviously quiet when you're inside the tomb, respectful, that sort of thing. While you're there, be sure to rub the nose of Abraham Lincoln on the statue out front. It's said to give you good luck, but it's just kind of another fun thing to do while you're there. But we felt like Abraham Lincoln's tomb was really interesting. The kids found it very fascinating, and it was kind of a good way to button up our trip to the land of Lincoln. While you're in the land of Lincoln, here are some other stops that we recommend you go to. So there's a local zoo that you can check out. There's also the current state capitol and the old state capitol that you can check out, both of those. And then our favorite was the Illinois State Museum. This was an awesome thing that was on our list, and we thought, yeah, this will be cool, but it really blew us away at just how amazing the museum was. So it has really cool natural and interpretation going through the history of the Midwest, or Illinois more specifically. And then it went into like the flora and fauna that you can find there in the area, and some of the human impacts as history has progressed on our natural environment. So we really enjoyed the State Museum. Then we went down to the bottom floor, and there's this cool like science center play museum down there where the kids could build a mastodon. There was like this little fossil dig thing they could do, and all sorts of really cool things that they could explore there. There's also some art interpretation on another floor, which was really interesting. Probably not my crew's favorite, but it might be yours. But anyway, this would be a great location, especially on a rainy day. If you're booked in the area and the weather isn't cooperating, go check out the Illinois State Museum, because it's totally fascinating, and it's really geared very, very well for children, adults as well, but really, really great for children if you're there in the area. There are so many different places that you can stay in Springfield. So I don't have very many top recommendations, but for most of the trip guides we do, we always do try to encourage camping or some sort of outdoor feel to it. As I said before, this trip guide is a little bit different. It's probably the most urban, or it's definitely the most urban trip guide that we have ever done. So when we stayed there, we actually stayed at the Crown Plaza, which is a 13-story hotel. We don't stay in a lot of hotels, and so for my kids, it was like totally living in luxury. They really were not that expensive for the nightly rate, and we were there midweek, so that might have helped as well. But so I did put that in the trip guide, and then I also put in that if you would like to go camping, that there is camping available at the new Salem historic site as well. So those are kind of our 2 recommendations for places to stay. Other than that, there's a lot of options for Airbnbs, VRBOs, hotels, whatever you want to do while you're in the area. We also included our car camping page in the trip guide, just in case you are camping and need to take a peek at the car camping packing list that we have. So that wraps up the trip guide that we have for the land of Lincoln. We hope that you totally enjoy your time here as you explore and dive in to some of the fascinating history that surrounds Abraham Lincoln and the time that he spent there in Springfield, Illinois.